My ideal F1 car would have no ground effect. In fact, very little downforce at all. It would have a 5-liter normally aspirated engine, at least 800 horsepower with 21-inch rear tires. Some say we should have narrower tires, but I'm not in favor of that, because you need big tires to slow you down if you spin. And you need a lot of horsepower to unstick big tires to make the cars slide. That would be a fantastic spectacle, I can tell you. Well, Gilles, here she is. This is a 1975 McLaren M23 fitted out to Gilles Villeneuve's specifications for the ideal Formula One car. Gilles had made this quote about the ideal F1 car some months before his death in Belgium in 1982, and I think he was yearning back to a time being frustrated with these high downforce, temperamental ground effects cars, and so he was looking back at his career, and actually the first car Gilles ever drove in a Formula One Grand Prix was an M23 at the British Grand Prix in 1977. So he thought, what would it be like to go back to these glory days before all of this downforce? And he quotes thinking about Ronnie Peterson sliding his Lotus around the corners and how much the fans enjoyed that and wanting to recreate that type of racing. So the specifications he dreamt up there, I'm not sure how serious, but I've gone ahead and recreated those in Assetto Corsa to see what would this be like overall. And so I have a 1975 McLaren M23 and I've fitted it out to Gilles' specifications. So perhaps the biggest change on this car are the massive Goodyear tires, and I searched around to try to find a real road car with 21-inch rear tires, and I'm not sure it existed. However, the Porsche 91730, one of the early Can-Am cars, had 19-inch rear tires, and there are some photos out there floating around of it testing larger tires than that. So I took some of the tires off the 917, actually scaled them a little bit for the front and the rear, and popped those on the McLaren here. And as Gilles mentioned, you need a lot of horsepower to move around tires like this. So I searched around for a naturally aspirated V8 engine that produced about 800 horsepower, and I had to go searching in a place closer to home than I thought. This engine is a V8 from a NASCAR, a 2019 NASCAR, the high horsepower version. And so these engines output about 800 horsepower and are naturally aspirated V8s. So I coupled that to the McLaren gearbox, slid it in the chassis, and we have what I could only say is an outrageous Formula One car. It looks a little like a Hot Wheel, honestly, but it's very, very fast and very cool. So I'm here at the Canadian circuit, which bears Gilles Villeneuve's name. I'm going to take this thing out and just explain a little bit what it drives like. So I'm sitting here at the end of the pit straight, and let me just rev this thing up and let you listen to it. So there's a lot of criticism of NASCAR out there, but one thing they did have right were the sounds and the power of the engines. And this thing is equipped with way too powerful of an engine. But let me roll away here and I'll start working my way around the circuit. We'll just let the clutch out, try not to spin the tires too much, although it's so easy to do. We'll come to the end of the pit lane and into turn number 2. So this is an early-ish version of the Montreal circuit for Assetto Corsa, and it's actually quite nice, but it's still a bit of a work in progress. But I thought, I'm talking about Gilles Villeneuve a little bit, had to go around the track named after him, at least somewhat. But we'll just tiptoe around. This car is extremely sensitive to tire pressures and temperatures. You gotta get the tires heated up if you want to have any grip in this. We'll shift down though, first gear for turn 5. This car has a lot of grip, but it comes in an interesting place. But if you wanted an ultimate raw, visceral racing experience, I can't think of anything that's much better than this. At a slow to medium speed, you've got a ton of grip from the tires, but if you do get over that slip point in a high gear, the car will slide around quite a bit. And once you get used to it, it is quite catchable. But we'll come through the hairpin here, and let me just get this thing up to a little bit of speed on the straightaway. miles an hour there. Break it down hard for the chicane. Don't want to fly into the wall of champions, of course. The chicane much tighter than it was when this track first was raced, but this car has an insane amount of power. So we'll just slide it on through turn 5, run wide, miss the apex. This car took quite a lot of tuning to get to the state that it's at now. You cannot just bolt these kind of tires on a chassis in this amount of horsepower and expect the car to feel the same as it did. The regular M23 has about 465 horsepower from its Cosworth DFV, and so we're nearing double the horsepower that this car originally had with this NASCAR engine in it. So we'll gas it up one more time on the straightaway. So ride it out at the top of the rev range. Oh, locking up the front tires. I'll miss the last chicane here. But just a taste of what this car is like. So this circuit in Montreal did start being raced in the late 70s, but I feel like for a car like this, you want something that is a little more flowing. So let's go to the other home of motorsport in Canada. I'm here in Mosport, near Toronto, the original home of Formula One in Canada. Between 1967 and 1977, Formula One raced here 8 times, just a couple years at Mont Tremblant, and put on amazing shows. And it wasn't until safety became a primary concern that Formula One left here, because this track is and was very dangerous. One of the things about this circuit, though, is it really has not changed at all since it was originally created. Just some additional runoff areas, just some additional walls, but the circuit layout itself has really remained the same. And so if you race on it today, it's just the same as it was in 1967. This is the Mosport 2020 circuit released for Assetto Corsa by John R. 777 over at Race Department. And it's a great version. It's been updated a bunch of times and is very accurate to the modern circuit. I don't normally race modern circuits, but since this one has not changed very much, it's still true to the original, and I feel suits this car really well. It's all fast sweeping corners, a couple technical bits, and of course, some high speed. So I've got a few AI on the circuit. I want to do an 8-lap race around here and see how this car really feels and see if it really is the ideal F1 car. So here we are at the back of the grid. Lights are lighting. Out. We're underway. Oh, all the wheels spin off the line, the smoke in front. Flat out towards the first corner. Brake plenty early down to second gear. We'll see if we can take the wet line around the outside. Oh, everybody's gonna back up as now we'll head towards the first hill. Third gear, will just ease it up the inside, taking advantage of the slow first lap. And now to this right-hander down to second gear. Just nose it in. Wait to get on the throttle. And now flat out for a second, but we'll come to another downhill, down to third gear. Oh, a car in front locking me sideways, but then the hardest braking zone, down to first gear for the Moss section. This is so difficult in a car like this, side by side with another car there, but we'll get on the throttle for the back straightaway and flat out up through fourth, up through fifth gear. We'll hit over 200 miles an hour here on a good lap. Come to the top of the hill here, down to fourth, down to third. Take it nice and easy on cold tires through this long right-hander. Then down to second for the final 2 corners. Almost want to put it in first for the final corner, but it's more well-behaved to roll it through in second. We'll come to complete the first of 8 laps. And then into turn 1. So getting away on the first lap without any major incidents, but lots of traffic. Come down to third gear. Oh, right against the outside of the circuit. They've since paved all that runoff. It was quite terrifying when it was all gravel at one stage. Come down to second gear though. Throttle it up. Put it in third just to make the car a little torqueier, help it turn. So we'll come over the top of Moss, just around the outside. I think I've got a car looking towards the inside. Whoa, tipping the wheel in the dirt. Get back on the throttle for the back straightaway. All the way up the gears. Flat out over 200 miles an hour under the Canadian Tire banner there, down to third. Tires heated up pretty nicely now. Come through the final couple of corners. See if I can get a good run onto the front straightaway. Get it up to fourth real quick there. This engine has so much power in a short span of time. You can really fly through the gears. Oh, taking another one there. So we'll come to the long left-hander here. Scariest turn on the track for sure. Oh, on the brakes, car almost getting away from me. And if you couldn't tell, these tires have so much grip, but their grip kind of goes in any direction. It makes for a pretty nervous race car. Very hard to handle, but very spectacular. Put it down to first up the inside, see if I can break in there. Flat out down the back straightaway, right behind this other car. Oh, just getting out of the throttle there. Don't want to touch tires on this high speed section. It would be catastrophe. See if I can take them on the outside though. Just ease it on through. It's so easy to overdo it. The throttle, the power comes on very quick. So completing another lap. On lap 4 of 8 now. Come over the top of the hill, take the inside line there. For a pack of Gilles Villeneuves, you have to think they're fairly well behaved. The car just wants to go fast. The downforce level is very nice for this type of car. Oh, getting very loose there. Come down to first gear for Moss. Whip of brake dust in front. Now up the gears, up through fifth gear. Flat out there, oh, almost touching the grass. Trying to get the thing straight under braking. Nosing around, catching the front of the pack now. I tried for many hours to get this AI to work well, but it seems Gilles' creation is just a little too fast for Assetto Corsa. Getting them to behave well and making them fast, they're two different problems. Try to take one up the outside there. Just wait our turn here through the sweeping left-hander. Down to second gear for this right-hander. Oh, I had a car next to me that whole time too. Very well behaved. And a car like this can take bumps too. See, the circuit is not completely flat. It's believed based off some scan data as well. And the suspension, I had to stiffen up a lot to be able to handle these types of tires, but it does play nice over the bumps. Up through fifth gear. Down to third, just ease it on through. It's very easy to go over the limit, but it is a real test for a driver. Lock of the brakes in front. Come through the last corner, complete the 5th lap there, starting the 6th. See if I can take another one on my favorite spot here. So now up to 2nd. Oh, breaking down to 3rd. We'll take 1st as well, maybe up the outside. Ooh, over the curbing there. Luckily got the paved runoff of a modern circuit, but taking the lead, that was a bit cheeky. We'll slide the car a little bit. Go up the gears. I got 2nd place right behind me. Try not to push it too hard into Moss. Just roll the car on through here. Now back on the throttle, see if I can pull out a little bit of gap on this back straightaway. Flat out there. Down to 3rd gear. Not even picking a line as the car shudders on the brakes. I did have to pop in slightly better brakes for this car to be able to handle the amount of horsepower and the speed that it gets up to. And of course, with tires like this, you can definitely get away with strong brakes. I bet I could go even stronger. Go down to 3rd for this left-hand sweeper. Oh, down to 2nd. It's easy to outbrake yourself. One thing about the M23 as a chassis is it has a very short wheelbase. I'd almost rather the car be a bit longer, which is normally the opposite to what I say. I think cars these days are far too long and big. But for this amount of grip and horsepower, it really does look like a micro machine or a Hot Wheels car. And it drives like one too. So we'll come through the final sector here to complete the penultimate lap. Second gear here, just ease it on through the corners. You can't use this car fully in most parts of the circuit. We'll start the final lap here at Mosport. Through T1, keep it in 3rd gear. Nose it over the top of the hill, understeer on the exit, but you can throttle your way out of that. Down to 2nd, and I just feel like there's a lot more time in this car if I was to spend more time learning it. It's a car that you could perfect over many, many laps. Come down to 1st though for Moss. Slide it a little bit there. And onto the back straightaway for the final time. Over 205 miles an hour. Break down, 3rd gear. And just a couple more corners. Onto the front straightaway to complete the race. So I hope it was a lot of fun watching this. I had a lot of fun making this car. When I found that quote from Gilles Villeneuve, I had to try it out. And I think it points to something that everybody should realize. Over time, you become nostalgic for maybe what you originally knew or what you saw when you first became interested in something. And I can't help but think that Gilles Villeneuve was thinking that when he thought this would be the best F1 car. Is it a great F1 car, or would it be a great F1 car? I believe so. It's super fast, has a ton of grip. I think for somebody better at driving than myself, you could go quite fast and put on quite a show at this. But is it the best F1 car, the perfect F1 car? Nobody could say. I think everybody has a different definition of that, and this was one very important driver's thoughts on the matters. So no doubt there'll be a lot of opinions in the chat, but I think we could go back to a little more simplistic a design and put it a little more in the driver's hands, but the technical aspect too, it's great to have in Formula One, and to have these types of debates is what it's all about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's any other interesting thoughts or creations out there, and I'll see you all again next time.